The White House and medical officials pleading with Americans to put their masks back on, but there is now growing backlash against those recommendations. A recent school board meeting in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, pitting parents replacing mask mandates against others who wanted to protect their children from the virus. Take a listen.
Kids are not affected. Please stop the insanity. You have already done damage to these kids by having them wear masks.
It is irresponsible to think that it's okay to bring people together and not care about people dying, people losing their lives.
Stefano, we are in the middle of a pandemic. In one sense, you have Alabama Governor Kay Ivey saying, please get your shots. In the other sense, you have the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, saying no mask mandates. The same thing in Georgia. So which is it? Are we in the middle of a pandemic and all hands on deck? Do everything you can to protect your public, or is it patsy and playing footsie with things like face masks?
Number one, we are in the middle of a pandemic. We are 100% in the middle of the pandemic, and the Delta variant is a game changer. I mean, we know from the CDC and we know from the research that people have been saying that it spreads like the chicken pox and that it's 8 times even more prevalent, let's say, than the original SARS-2 COVID-19. So this affects us all the way through. The debate within the states of Florida specifically, where some school boards like Broward County that want to implement these mask mandates in the school, and the governor doesn't want to, those school boards should be supported 100% by the federal government, because the reality is the federal mandate supersedes the states, and especially for our children's lives, what's happening to teachers, getting teachers back to work, to be able to work in a safe environment. This is a complete political, again, a political ploy from Governor DeSantis to want to impose his own personal will in the state of Florida when it's not safe and we are still in the middle of a pandemic.
Teslin, I want to show our audience that march to the Senate by House Republicans to prove that they don't have to wear masks. In one sense, you've got that march to the Senate by House Republicans. In the other sense, you have House or Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell wearing a mask and now using his own money to put out PSA saying, please get the shots. How do you make sense of the silly season this time in Washington? Because it has reached epidemic proportions, to use a COVID term.
Absolutely, which kind of goes back to what we were talking about before the break. This is not about just taking the easy route out and saying, well, let's just let the private sector step up to the plate and handle it. In the school system, these children don't work for the private sector. The teachers don't work for the private sector. My sister is a teacher in Georgia, and I have never seen her be so paranoid and anxious about going to school. And she's vaccinated, and she will still be wearing a mask because of the lack of accountability that is being held at the state level, the government level, which runs the school district. So this is absolutely silly season, and it's only being pushed by leaders who are in charge that are making a mask look as if you are taking one side over the other. So it's the vaccine, it is the mask, it is the leadership, it is the constant rallies every weekend. This is not going to be handled just by making sure that FedEx or any private employer makes sure that everyone is vaccinated, because again, the virus can still spread even if you're vaccinated. So it's not just vaccine, it is the spreading of the virus. And so these leaders are going to have to step up, and voters are going to have to make sure they step up. And like I always say, let's be done arguing about it. Let's also go with the strategy, let's not chase them, let's replace them. There's a midterm coming up in 2022. And it's time to move forward with getting better leadership, and particularly in the Attorney General position, with making sure that those who continue to put people at harm are held accountable, even on the criminal side.
Josh, is it important to point out to Americans that we may reaching the point where, as a society, we have to accept as many as 50,000 new infections a day and another 400,000 people dying, among the unvaccinated, by the way? And that being said, is this mask battle that is going on, is this the new migrant surge coming to the southern border? Is this the new wall that we're going to build that Mexico is going to pay for? Is this the new voting rebellion that we see in so many southern states? In other words, if you can't get something done, do something that everybody pays attention to that is so silly that we spend time on broadcasts like this one and others actually talking about what are they doing?
Dale, I think you said it best. Unfortunately, it's a silly season. We're moving into the midterms. And so we're going to see, politicians say and do anything to pander to their base, to get votes, to get reelected. I certainly understand the frustration of many, American citizens who are upset. We were told earlier this year, get vaccinated. If we get enough people to get vaccinated, we won't have to wear masks anymore. And we got a taste of that over the summertime. And now we're being told we have to wear them again. But we still are in the middle of a pandemic. And I think it's up to President Biden to really show leadership on this, really explain to the American people, what exactly is happening, why we need to wear masks again. And again, how do we get these numbers up? I think he's moving in the right direction with, focusing on the federal workforce, focusing on the military, and hopefully we can bring in the teachers unions as well, right? We're talking about schools reopening again, and we can't do that effectively without, teachers getting vaccinated. And again, I'll go back to the private sector. This is an opportunity for them to rise to the occasion and really take a lead on this. If we keep depending on politicians, it's just going to be infighting. We won't get it done. So this is an opportunity, I think, for the federal government and the private sector to really step up and get these vaccination numbers up.
Stefano, there was a time in this country when we actually paid attention to scientists. Just yesterday, they arrested a man who threatened the life of Dr. Anthony Fauci. In New York City, after 9/11, it didn't matter whether you were a Democrat or a Republican. You were talking about the fact that America had been attacked. But now everything is red state, blue state. When does the fever in this case break? How many Americans have to die before we say it's time to follow the science, it's time to do what government says with regards to simple things like masks and let go of the politics? Because let's be realistic. If everybody stopped wearing a mask tomorrow, if the Republican side of the aisle succeeded, what would actually change?
What would change is that the disease would rapidly increase. And what would happen is that we would be getting more of our family members and our friends sick. I think you ask a very good question. It's a very deep question. You would think it's our family members being affected is the thing that brings us together. Okay. Or our loved ones, or seeing people die. I've experienced all those things in my personal life, and I think that the Republicans have to implement this and have to speak to their constituents in a very grown-up way, in a very adult way, and say, listen, these ideas of civil liberties, the liberties that you want to say of I can do whatever I want, is superseded when we have a global pandemic. We have never seen in our generation such a large global pandemic. It has not been seen even in our parents' generation. And I think that part of this is the messaging of it from the Republicans to do a good job, to want to be collaborative with everybody, with all the different types of individuals, whether they're libertarians, whether they're Democrats, whether they're moderate Democrats, whether they're Trumpsters. And I think that President Trump at the beginning, even though he did initiate Operation Warp Speed and with the federal government, I think that really began us off the wrong footing. It's the wrong footing for the way that we started this pandemic, and it created seeds of doubt. And once you do that, you rarely get to remake a first impression again. And that's the metaphor that I would use.
Teslin, I keep hearing Hillary Rodham Clinton during the Benghazi hearing saying, what difference does it make? We are 612,000 Americans dead. We are right back in the middle of the pandemic. And the Delta variant is scaring people, and Republicans are running around saying, don't take away don't make me wear a mask. It's getting so confusing. I'm getting confused. in what the messaging is. My question actually to Stefano just a second ago wasn't really whether or not what would change, but whether or not after the White House said, okay, we're going to walk away from the mask mandate, whether Republicans would come up with something else to complain about.
They're absolutely going to come up with something else to complain about. Let's just call a thing a thing. The Republicans are not all Republicans, because obviously Mitch McConnell is now on board, and he is the leader, allegedly, of the Republican Party in Congress, and they are not following his lead. So what does that mean? That means that Trump is in charge. It means that this is white supremacy at its core. White supremacy in this country. Let's call a thing a thing. Let's stop, saying, well, maybe they'll just get it together. Maybe they'll just understand this is for their citizens. Has nothing to do with that. White supremacy at its core is all about seeking and destroying any and all things that get in the line of being in power. This is about power and control. So at the end of the day, nothing's going to change. We're in the thick of this at this point. Bottom line, end of discussion. The messaging will continue in 2022. We're going to keep talking about it on this network and every other network. We're going to keep having this issue, because this is about President Trump and every proxy that follows him to be in charge in 2022 and 2024. That's why I say it is so much more sinister, not cynical, sinister than what it appears on the surface, and that is power. And so we cannot just continue, again, I keep saying to my co-panelists, we cannot continue to say, well, the politicians are going to argue, they're just going to argue, and that's just how it is. No, that's not how it is. It's about people from the ground insisting that they do better. It's not about just making it easy for the public, for the private sector. They can do their part, sure.
Right.
But this is about dealing with it at its core, the tree of the issue, which is white supremacy that Donald Trump is pushing through this party. And let me say this, Dale.
Josh,
white supremacy.
Stefano, got to go. Got to take a break. Got to take a break.
Okay.
Got to take a break. I want to thank all of you for joining me. We'll be right back. You're watching DC Today.